Welcome, everybody. This afternoon, we're going to have a little fun with food, not throwing at each other, which you can't do on Zoom anyway, effectively, but learning a little bit about the history. Judy, you want to introduce our speaker?
I'd be delighted to. Our speaker today is Susan Benjamin, and I met Susan the first time she spoke to CHoW years ago when she had published a book called Sweet as Sin, and it was about the history of candy in the United States. And she and I became friends, frankly, and have stayed in touch over the years. And her work is continues to be very interesting. She has the world's only historical candy store in Harpers Ferry, and as part of my work with La Chaîne de Rotisseur, we stopped there on our way to having lunch in Shepherdstown, and she gave the most fascinating talk. It was like maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes on various candies, and people were just enthralled. And now she has come out with yet another book. I'll hold it up, called Fun Foods of America. And it's really interesting. It has all these foods, some of which you may have heard about but didn't know the history of, some of which I never heard about. But regardless, her writing style is just a whole lot of fun and interesting to read. I don't want to go on and on about it, but I will say for those who might be interested in tasting some of the candy, the Shen in preparation for Valentine's Day is going to have a delivered event because of snow and so forth. So if you wanted to participate in a Zoom where you also get to taste the food, just contact me and I could tell you what the costs are and so forth. But it's on February 4th, the first Wednesday in February at 6 p.m. We figured life is uncertain, have dessert first that day, so that's why it's early. But Susan is just a great speaker, and she's often seen on the History Channel about fun foods or foods that built America, and she's also been on NPR out of Boston. And so I feel lucky that we have her speaking with us today. And without further ado, let me turn this over to Susan Benjamin, the world's only serious scholar on the history of candy, as it turns out. So here
Yeah,
she is.
sounds like
Susan.
hyperbole, but it's really very little scholarly research done about candy. So I do that. And thank you for inviting me, Judy. So I don't do talks very much anymore. We started selling only to museums, and I felt that I don't want to do talks anymore because it's just, I need to be focusing on other things. And when Judy asked me, it's like, yeah, I'll give a talk, whoever, wherever, definitely I'll give a talk. Because we've known each other and been friends for so long. I also appreciate you saying that my talk lasted about 10 or 15 minutes. It was actually closer to an hour. And so that means that it went very quickly.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, thank you.
People just loved it. They had talked about it and continued to reference it since.
Good.
So,
Thing. Yeah. So, I'm not, I actually, a few days ago also stopped selling to museums. So this is even more rarefied to be doing this, and I'm very happy to be here. So, I was thinking, what am I going to talk to you about? Because there's so many avenues where fun food is concerned and so many fascinating aspects. So as I'm a scholarly researcher, and in the sense that I do original sourcing, and also that I have done projects for Oxford University and other scholarly based places like that. And in doing that kind of research, which is really the only worthwhile research as far as I'm concerned, is really enlightening about all the craziness we have about not only food history, but our history anyway as people. So I thought, wouldn't that be so fascinating, hopefully to you, as much as it's been fascinating to me, to be able to tell you some of the some of the crazy stories and beliefs that we have and why they matter to us culturally and in terms of people who are interested in food history, but also presumably in history as well. So how many people are there? Is there
We have 24 participants.
24? Okay. So with that in mind, I really invite you to join in, to ask questions. Whatever you like is really fine with me. This is not formal in the sense of Q&A at the end. It's more like Q&A and whatever as we go. So, as picking through these options, I thought one of the really important ones was the role of food history in expressing who women are and what we really do in the kitchen, but also elsewhere where food is concerned, especially, I should tell you, my specialty is fun foods, but it's also restricted to North America. So I don't talk about anything that came here, say from the reaches of Asia, unless it had an immediate effect on North America. So the first one I do want to talk to you about is chocolate chip cookies. So just for the interest, I've done 11 episodes with the Food That Built America, and I was really glad when they asked me to talk about chocolate chip cookies. So I could get my word in about what they were talking about. So in saying that, just a little disclosure, I really think that the Food That Built America is good because they have scripts and they told me I don't have to use them and that I could do my own research and they'd replace their stuff with mine. So it worked out with the chocolate chip cookie. So the chocolate chip cookie, as you may know, I can't see people here, but I'm going to guess that everybody knows that it originated with Ruth Wakefield, and that originated in Massachusetts. And it's a fascinating story because if you really look at it, it's typical of how women are depicted in so many ways, barring, of course, the home economics movement or before that, the domestic science movement. So, but really what we're looking at is this woman named Ruth Wakefield and her husband, Ken. It's so folksy. Bought a wonderful little inn that was called the Toll House Inn because it was on the road that used to be a toll house, which is true. It was. And they got this place. And Ruth was a fabulous cook, as women always are. They're fabulous cooks, and she wanted to please the customer who's coming. So what she did is she made this kind of a butter cookie, and she was experimenting with it, and she wanted to put, I believe it was chocolate. No, yeah, she wanted to put something in it, and she didn't have anything around. I think it was chocolate. She didn't have any baker's chocolate around. And so what was she going to do? Oh no. So what she did was she was innovative and she had a big chunk of chocolate there. And she took out her carving knife and she chopped it into little pieces. And she took those little pieces and she put it into the batter. Boy, she got out of that one. She could make a really good cookie and it had chocolate in it. And even better than that, the chocolate didn't melt. And so she started to serve them to people and everybody, seemed to like them. And she sold them there at her inn and people got them at her inn. And as so often happens, which is true with disbursement of anything, but food in particular, it wound up going out all around the country because people stopping at the toll house, it was on a mainish thoroughfare, and they started to know about it and they started to have it. And this is a really good story. And then it ends with, there was Ruth. Ruth was having her sales, and who should show up but somebody from Nestle, because she was using Nestle chocolate. And they said, Ruth, I'll tell you what, we're going to make a deal. We're going to give you all the chocolate chips you ever can have, if you could ever want, if you would give us the recipe that you use so we could put it on the back of the chocolate chip cookie bag so that we can sell more. So Ruth said, sure, I'll exchange my very important, wonderful recipe for some all the chocolate chip cookies I could ever use. And that was the story. So she did, and her name got all over the place. So what's missing from this story? What's missing is the credibility of Ruth Wakefield. She was just a nice, friendly cook in her household. The reality of what she actually did and the reason why she did it. So this was called to my attention in an outline that I actually got from the History Channel, the Food That Built America, where they said, could you address reasons why Ruth Wakefield would substitute her cookie recipe, give it over for no pay, no anything, and why she would do that just to keep getting chocolate chips? Oh, really good question, right? So what I discovered as I went to the archives, but also to obituaries and anything I could find about her, was in fact this story, as usual, as so typically happens, really diminished her role as a woman, which you would never find, trust me, with a man. And that role was, first of all, she was a dietitian and she was an educator. And she was a very, very careful cook. She was not, as I could tell, directly involved in home economics, but she was a real giver of the tenets of home economics, which is that you want to know how much what your cooking is costing, and here's how you do it. You want to know the value of that. Here's how you do it. You want to know the economy overall, and here's how you do it. And so she had all of that, and she was an educator. So was she in her kitchen stirring up the mix and, oh no, I don't have any chocolate to put in it. Here, give me the carving knife. Probably not. She was way too professional for anything like that to happen. And she would have been completely aware of what was in her pantry because she was a businesswoman on top of that. She was a consummate professional. So it's probable, if not definite, that she got the idea of cutting up chocolate pieces to put into the dough. Now, remember at that time, cookies were really starting to come into the universe of baking, and that would continue now that we have packaging, and now that we have women who don't really want to be in the kitchen all the time, would rather buy something that's bought if they could, and so on and so forth. Everything was right for that. So she made her cookies, and they were very popular. And then somehow, again, not like somebody from NASA go, whoa, these are great cookies. This is amazing. Let's go in and see what this gal's doing. But instead, what they did, looking on the radar, the economic radar, they found that the area where she was operating had more sales of their chocolate, of Nestle's chocolate, than any other place. Nestle at that time was in a really big battle with the nemesis. Anybody want to guess who that was? Oh, Judy, I can't hear you.
Oh, Hershey.
Hershey, of course, right? And it was like eye-opening to them. Here's how we get the foot in the door and find a path to overturning Hershey, which was a lifelong event as they get swallowed up by various corporations, but except Hershey. But in any event, so what happened was that somebody from Nestle contacted her, and there was some kind of communication, and they did say, can we put your recipe on the back of our chocolate chip cookies? And she said yes, and she did not require pay. Why would she do that? You know, women just give things away, so the story goes. Anybody want to guess? The reason, don't forget, is she was an educator. And her recipe, what do educators and storytellers want to do? They want to get their recipes, not necessarily the recipes, their knowledge, their stories, their tools out into the universe. What better way was there for her to do this than to have a big company publish them? I mean, you think about writing books, right? This is nothing. This is reaching the masses. And this is really important to how she lived her life and to what she did. So yeah, she apparently she did get some money, but it was more or less like a stipend. It wasn't enough to kind of spread the in to new places or anything like that. Not that she'd want to, but it really was so valuable. And in that, the whole story leaves out the major part of what she was and why she mattered. And that women really have been in the universe of food and in fun food in particular, really powerful. So, is there anything anyone wants to ask or talk about regarding that one story? No?
Hey, I have a question.
Sure, Bruce.
You cannot copyright a recipe. So she would not have had the ability to bargain for a royalty that would have gone on for years. Did you find any indication of any kind of bargaining where she actually tried something like that?
No,
If she'd been asking for a royalty, they would have given her the back of their hand.
well, I don't know about that issue, but what I do know in reading about it is that she never got any, and she did get a certain amount of money to use it, whether that was legal, it was just nice, or maybe an agreement that she couldn't get it over to Hershey or whatever. I don't really know that, but I do know that she, as they said in the Food Channel, why would she just let them do that? So that's best I can tell you there.
And did she increase her use of chocolate chips when she could get them gratis like that?
No, there's no indication that was the case. And eventually, the place did close down. Her husband died and she died, and that was that. But the cookie lives on,
It
certainly.
does.
Yeah,
Known as the Toll House cookie now.
Still is. Yeah, maybe it was the name,
Whole
Bruce. Maybe
House is on the package.
Yeah.
it
I
is. Yeah.
saw that Food Network. I'm really into that food history. I know all of those stories, and I know, and the Toll House is still on the package.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and that could be the answer. Is could they
I
use the
think
name?
there was something that was mentioned that it would be free advertising for her as well.
Yeah, she had a small place, she had a small kitchen. There was no indication at all she wanted to have wholesale cookies or send them
Well,
all over the world.
What's interesting is I prefer Hershey's chocolate to Nestle's,
Uh-huh.
except for the chocolate chips. I don't know if it's because of the balance with the cookie dough, but I tried it with Hershey's chocolate. It's not as good.
All right, well, that's a good indication of what we could be considering when we make chocolate chip cookies. Recipes, as have changed considerably. They're waxier and they're not quite the same for both. But I really appreciate that recommendation, as I'll take it. I do want to say one other piece of this story, which is at the time of the cookie was coming out, in the 30s, and then leading especially into the 50s, the marketing of cookies and of chocolate chips and so forth was really fascinating, as it somewhat continues to be today, where the advertisement shows women serving the cookies, serving the cakes, serving all these delectable items, and literally, I did write a book about this that my agent couldn't sell about 15 years ago, and she asked me, do I want to try again now? So I don't know what's brewing with that, but I said no. But right next to it were diet plans for women, and you have this complete separation from what a woman was making. And wasn't just that, it was over and over and over again in so many forms. You need to be slim. And so here she is serving this happy family these cookies or cakes or whatever, but she couldn't have it. So it was the rise of the slender woman, and the woman that is not entitled to such things as food, so as fun foods. So it was pretty interesting. I think what I would like to do now is talk a little bit about cake and women who made it. So when you're researching history and you really want to do a good job, you can't just look at the stuff that's already written, right? Because if you start looking at one of the things I had to negotiate with Oxford University was I want to do the original sources, and that's going to be the bulk of what I do, okay? I'm not going to be using all these other people who are really famous because they're discussing it. I want to go to the source because the source, trust me, you go to the source, it's always different from what you see in the world today. And the scholarly research is fabulous. It's important, but it's just not totally the same. So you're stuck really getting the information that you have from people who are educated, of a certain income bracket, certain race also, or relationship to people of other races, and so forth and so forth, so on. So it's a real stretch to be able to find what was really happening. So you need to find reporters and food historians of the time who were talking about issues. So one of them that's so interesting was the role of cake, and in particular birthday cake. So birthday cake is amazing, seeing how new it is. Birthday cakes didn't even exist because people didn't even know their birthdays until the late 1800s or so, where it became more mainstream. They didn't even have clocks a lot of places. They just had a central clock in the middle of their town. If they're rural, then somebody said using sundials is possible, but it doesn't really help on a cloudy day. So, who knows? But now we have the birthday cake. And we see in stories, for example, of the pioneer women, right? And you see them with aprons on, and there's this really nice kind of pioneerish carriage next to them, and they're busily making these cakes. And they go out and they go under the chickens and they're getting that, and then they put in the flour, or may have been cornmeal. I don't know what they meant it to be, but that is the impression we get of what's happening now. So here are two stories which I think are pretty interesting. One of them is these pioneer women were not sitting there in a nice little apron doing that while the men were off doing the heavy work, as you so often see. So I will tell you that the way these women lived and how they navigated was really amazing. In researching fun foods, I actually found several recipes, right? Because they weren't really recipes that didn't come about till later, but from the mid 1800s, and of pioneer women. And what they did was, not only didn't they have money, and not only didn't they have help, they were really isolated, a lot of them, without even having radios. And radios became popular until an government initiative in the 20s got them the radio and so forth. They not only were cooking, but they were literally building the houses. They were out there building the houses. They were making the kids' clothes. They were growing the livestock and the foods, and then they were harvesting and cooking it. This is all under the umbrella of real, what we would now consider or call overtly poverty. So kudos to these people. So the recipe that I found was pretty remarkable. If you had them, you would put in maybe one, maybe two, if you had them, turkey eggs. This one called for turkey eggs. Then if you had maybe a little bit, maybe you had butter or some kind of oil, and it wasn't clear in this recipe what that oil would be. And then you might have some spices, that may be growing around. And I think fennel was one of them. But not, there wasn't that much to add to it. So what do you do about the flour? So this is so important to what these women would do to make a birthday cake. They had cornmeal, and they put cornmeal in these bags. And what they would do is they'd shake out the cornmeal and put it in. and then they would shake the bag some more, and they were taking the residue of cornmeal, and my hunch is probably whatever else they could find, and using these scraps as a sort of flour to hold the whole thing together. And from that arduous, but to them very important task, they created what they called, in this one article I find, a pioneer woman's cake. So look, we have the woman at home tending to the children and the men going off and doing the heavy lifting and coming back and all of that. Yeah, the men did that, there's no question, but the women did the equivalent at that time. And it's really important to see that under the umbrella of food, because women were very strong and very on their own until domestic science and the home economic movement really started pushing for their getting educated. So am I good talking about, I'm gathering, because I did go to a talk through, all you guys know what I'm talking about with home economics movement, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
So that is, that's part of it. But here's the other thing I want to tell you, is this, how did the birthday cake arise? Does anybody know? Is this a mystery? I wish I could see you guys. I know if you're going, I know, or, don't bring me, I already know, this is so old. The birthday cake didn't come first. The song Happy Birthday came first.
Ah,
And that was created in the 1800s by two women, the Hills. You know what? I'm sorry. It was a cake that they made. It wasn't a birthday cake. I was saying they made a birthday cake. It wasn't a birthday cake. It was a cake. And I don't want to go into how I just realized that. The information I got is a birthday cake, but it wasn't. It was a cake because, all right, so the birthday song, which popularized, let's say, the birthday cake, but I didn't find evidence of them before. The song was Happy Birthday to You, right? How did that start? That really got things rolling in the birthday way. Two sisters, the Hill sisters, in the late 1800s, wrote the song. It was called Good Morning, Children. And they had it in the school so the kids could greet each morning with a little song, good morning to you, good morning to you, good morning to you, good morning, children, good morning to you, that kind of thing. And that got co-opted by various songwriters and other people, which then became the Happy Birthday to You version. And it was so popular and so easy to sing and all the rest, although some say it was very hard. But anyway, that spread the universe of birthday cakes, right? And that is the story of the Hill sisters, right? Wrong. They were sisters. One of them was a dietitian and she was one of them was a dietitian and a chef but she was really a musical academic, and she studied music and cultures. The other one was a teacher in the progressive movement, progressive education movement. And so they created this song that anybody could have and everybody could use. And in fact, the sister who was writing the music and was known for her abilities with music, was also a scholar of what was then called Negro music. So she was studying African American history as well. She was really egalitarian. And they created this song, which then opened the doors to birthday parties and birthday cakes to celebrate with, right? So again, not these cute women, but something else. So anything else anybody wants to bring up?
Question. I mean, cake as a celebratory experience.
Yes.
Must go back a very long way, right? I mean, it wasn't your everyday food. It was something that was made for an occasion. Would you think?
It was. By millennia. Yeah, cake has been around for as a festive way for a really long time. And
But
if you look at writings about cake, they said that it was probably the first baked food. But really, getting the grains to be more digestible, and then you heat it and stir it and all the rest. So yeah. So in fact, that is true about cakes, and its own history is pretty interesting. Yeah.
so the idea of cakes and then using it to mark an occasion, and then now with the birthday song, well, there's an occasion, you can sing happy birthday, and when people know their birthdays were, how about putting candles on the cake to mark the birthdays? Any information about that?
Yeah, there is information. And again, okay, so if you read Western history, everything starts with the Romans, right? Pretty much. And trust me, it didn't all start with the Romans, but it was the idea that the candles were used as a way of light, and the whole use of light, bringing back light, and were used as decorations, and so that they had a formidable presence in symbolic history anyway, and so they were used on the cake as well. But a lot of it was marketing too. So,
Sure.
sure. So,
What makes a food a fun food?
oh, by my definition,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, by my definition, fun food is food that has these qualities. And then I think my follow-up to this will be to talk about pies.
Oh, good. Okay.
They are a fun food, but they're both. All right. They have the quality of they're used for specific occasions. Um, and they're for very specific not always specific, but for an occasion that really matters to us, like weddings and the wedding cake and the giornamens that were around since actually the Romans, who knows who else. They were kind of thrown at the happy couple, and so it's specific in that way. The fun foods are when we are together, when we're in a group. In particular, things, if you think about even the fun food of popcorn that we enjoy so much in movie theaters when we're with a whole bunch of people. Um, and the fact that we eat it exclusively because we like it, right? So that's the other. So it's really separate from the universe of food up until recently, which was that it does something specific to us. What has happened recently is that fun food has co-opted pretty much every food. So you see the candy bar fun food, right? Chocolate with stuff mixed in it is now the energy bar, right? And you see that sauces really are syrups. I mean, maybe not technically, but have the same function. So that when people say, "Oh, don't eat candy, don't eat all these things that are bad for you," no, that's not what bad for you is. Bad for you is everything else, because we don't know what we're eating. We don't know what separates fun, because we go to Walmart, or some people go to Walmart anyway, and they get these pre-made cakes that they put in their lunch. It's not what food has always been, and it's a harder way to distinguish what it is. Does that help?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So shall we go on to
Yeah.
pie?
Let's go to pie.
All right. So if you listen to NPR, I have been doing series with them when I can get to. It's out at WBUR, and we've been meaning to do one on pies. So this is what I'm doing for NPR. But you get the preview. All right. Pies. So pies have got to be the strangest fun food. And I just want to give you a little bit of a glimpse of that. The blackbirds baked in a pie, 4 and 20 baked in a pie. That actually did happen. So that was in the 1600s when in Europe they baked, and in England in particular, but I'm sure other places, baked pies where they had, it's so crazy. They had birds, blackbirds, and frogs, and other things baked inside the crust. And then when it was done cooking, they would cut open the crust and push it back, and these creatures inside were so were still sort of like alive, and they were alive enough that they would go flying out of the pie. Okay, so you're thinking, wouldn't there be blood and excrement and so on in the pie? Yes, but they didn't eat it. It was for that purpose. And they even had, and by the way, I totally source everything I do. This is really not made up because it's going to sound crazy. Little people who they call dwarfs would be inside the pie, and they would jump. And one in particular became very famous, but I'm trying to remember his name. But anyway, he jumped out of the pie, and this is like royal big long tables, and so if he would jump out of the pie and run up and down the table reciting poetry and singing.
Oh my
So
God.
so that's that. So what happened when the pies came to North America? So I'm gonna tell you that they were not what we eat today, particularly, but became that way later, particularly, with the hand pies and so forth that workers had, where they would use bread or whatever and use whatever kind of crust. But they were something different. So my example for you of what those pies were is a Martha Washington's pie. Okay, so we in America love Washingtons, and we love presidents and all of that. And we did sell to Mount Vernon, and they were wonderful, and we sell to most of the presidential places. We really focus on everybody else. It's not our focus is of research. But, you got to say, these people, Martha Washington, she leads the way. So what her pie consisted of, and this is, again, sourced, and crazy as it is the pancreas, testicles, ovaries, glands of all of these various once living creatures that are housed into this pie and cooked. And what do they have? Oysters are really big. Oysters have been really big forever. So, probably oysters, it could have been turtles, could have been whatever. And their parts. But this recipe in particular listed those things in the pie, those items in the pie. So they weren't really what we think of as a pie today. It really was like a meal that was enclosed and easy to eat, I guess, or better to eat. Having said that, the plot thickens because, and by the way, we're segueing into all American food, since Judy asked the question. So I'm not talking about women's roles at this point. But what happened with the all American pie, strangely enough, was that it became the evil food for almost 100 years, starting at some point in the 1800s and ending in around the 1920s, 30s. So not everybody thought that. I mean, there are quotes all around saying that pie is as American as anything else, and it wasn't everybody, but there was a very strong movement. Think prohibitionists, right, or temperance movement people, of people who really thought pies were immoral, that eating pie would lead to again, it's so crazy, divorce, that would lead to sexual dysfunctions, in craziness that was worse. Some of the things I found, these are in the publications themselves, by the way, not from another book, saying that they're worse than alcohol, that pies are worse than alcohol. And this trend continued for quite some time. I really have no idea why. My guess might be that the same thing, by the way, happened with candy. That if you eat candy, then you're driven to madness. They would blame murders on the person who had too much candy. They would say that's a big blaze, and they would show a picture in the newspaper, which was an illustration of somebody racing out of the blaze and the fire carrying armfuls of candy. Definitely candy was the culprit. And a lot of it, as you may know, as was, say, with everything from the graham crackers, which were made by Graham, in order to curb sexuality. And picked up by Kellogg later as he made his flakes for the same reason, make them really horrible tasting and all the rest. So you see that trend with fun food of it just really sinking to really horrible depths in North American history. What later happened was in World War One, and now this is not my original source. I did find this in other places, but found a lot more about pies after World War One. So that to me would support it. But that during World War One, the soldiers in France were eating French pies, the pies that the French had, and they really liked them. And the U.S. was, you know, the War Department did not want them converting to the French way of thinking. And hey, we have our own pies, and wound up not only saying that they had to eat the pies, but making it a law that they couldn't eat the other pies. And so whatever really happened, it sounds crazy, but it may not be as crazy as it sounds. For whatever reason that happened, it was after World War One that now we have a resurgence of pies and they became more popular. That dipped in the 40s going into the 50s because they're hard to make and they take forever. So, and women at home now trying to escape the shackles of the kitchen and so on and so forth. And so now the ready-made pie crust started coming out and the frozen pies and so on and so forth, as well as, you know, cakes and other things. And so brought pies to the fore of the American food story. But yeah, they were pretty. They aren't what we think they were. So,
Wow.
yes. So I did want to talk a bit about another example of that, which would be potato chips. But I can also, and then I was going to speak a little bit about candy as well. But before I do, does anybody want to hear about either any kind of candy or fun food that I might be able to address? I get a lot of calls and I have a video that I show that goes on the internet. So I get literally hundreds of people asking about candy. So just very quickly before I round this talk off, is there anything anybody wants me to talk about in particular?
I'd be interested in sorghum fudge.
Sorghum fudge. Okay, you interested in fudge or sorghum or both? Okay, I'm going to talk about both. Well, I'm going to talk more about sorghum. So, sorghum is a grain, as you may know, right? And it's an interesting story because, in terms of what you ate in American history, was largely shaped by the politics of the time and of the end of the trade routes and that kind of thing. Not like now where we can go in and buy it. So one of the real controversial foods was sugar. And I'm going to tell you right now, wasn't sugar like now it's controversial because we think if we have too much, we'll get really sick. And it's really bad for us while we go out and have a, low sugar blueberry pie. Blueberry sugar, no, are you kidding me? But in any event, so what happened was that abolitionists, including groups of African American women, really forceful groups in Philadelphia, boycotted any food that was made with enslaved labor. And one of them was sugar. And that's really important because you have to have sugar. If you don't have sugar, you can't survive. You need kinds of sugar. It was used in medicines. It was used in cooking. It was for a lot of reasons. So they needed to find alternatives. One of them wound up being the sorghum grain. Sorry about that. My husband's out and I had my dog in here with me so he wouldn't scrape at the door. So the sorghum grain was something that had been in North America since the ships carrying enslaved people came. And what they did was, excuse me one second, sorry about that, guys. This is why I don't like Zoom, Judy. It's unpredictable here. All right, give me a biscuit. So the sorghum grain was used by enslaved people. It came over on those ships and was used by enslaved people as a sugar. They would boil it. It wasn't a sugar, but they used it as a sugar. And they used it for cooking. They used the reeds as brooms. I mean, they did a lot with it. So the abolitionists are looking for alternatives, but these are pretty much like these, a lot of them were, as I mentioned, this particular movement were in Philly, and African American people were involved. But a lot of them are like these white guys and well-meaning Quakers and people like that who never met an enslaved person in their life, and they didn't know about sorghum. So what they were doing at the time, unlike today where we only want made in the USA, is, I'm sure you know, people going out exploring and finding new things to bring back. So these abolitionists discovered sorghum. Oh my gosh, this is so great. It came over, they had people out there scouting for alternatives to cane sugar. And there it was, sorghum. Didn't know it'd been around that whole time. But in any event, they promoted it, and it became one of the sugars of the abolitionists that they were using to replace cane sugar. The sorghum is amazing because it can grow in almost any climate. It grows all over the world. And eventually it really took off around North America, and was called sorghum molasses, and was used in a number of things, including, I guess what you said, Laura, because I don't have any recipe of that, but it sounds interesting, including fudge. Which was apparently made in the late 1800s from women who had gone to the so-called girls' schools that they could make in the dorm. So it would make sense, maybe because sorghum was cheap, it was easy to get. It wasn't really a molasses, as you may know. Here's the sugar, and the dregs of the sugar is the molasses. But it was more like a syrup that was made from sorghum. So it was a really important plant. Today, where I live in West Virginia, I'm originally from Boston, so I find this incredibly interesting, that there's sorghum fields all over the place, but they're using it more for animal feed. Sheep apparently really like it. And also, as with so many grains, as ethanol, and possibly as, who knows what else. But anyway, so that's the answer, a kind of a longish answer, but that's the answer to the question. I do want to have one more thing to add about fudge, Laura, as long as you brought it up. That fudge, why was fudge called fudge? It's very interesting, because at the girls' schools, they couldn't go out at night, and the weekends they were stuck with nothing to do. So in their dorms, they made fudge. But why did they call it fudge? Because it really wasn't chocolate. It was like chocolate. So they were fudging it. They were fudging it and calling it chocolate fudge, chocolate, but it wasn't really fudge. And so that is the reigning thought about why that happened. In every school where it's thought, every college where it's thought to have begun, because nobody denies it was there, they do deny that their people created the fudge. So, yeah. So, Judy, do you have a preference, or I can move on to the potato?
No, go ahead, whatever.
All right, I'm going to end with the potato chip, because potatoes themselves are so amazing. Because potatoes, they're a starch, right? And they can be sweet, and we can use them whatever way we want. So where did the potato begin? With this crowd, you probably know, but it began somewhere around what is now considered Peru. And so what's important about the potato is that it traveled on the trade routes of the native people into North America, so that it wound up, the Native Americans of the southern part of North America, what is now Texas, whatever, they had potatoes. And they even turned potatoes into what is now called potato candies back in those days. So it really is a North American food. The potato chip, oddly, was said to have been created in New York in the 1800s by a guy named George Crumb. So George Crumb was a chef at this place in Syracuse, and it was Saratoga, and he was making, he was making his potatoes. I guess he was cutting them up in some way, and a customer there was really, really upset. He thought they were terrible and he sent the potatoes back. So George Crumb had a big ego about him. And he said, all right, fine. So he made them into teeny little pieces that he fried and brought over to this horrible guy. And those pieces were to become the potato chip. What's really interesting is that the potato chip was being created elsewhere by a woman who was her full name was I can't remember what her name was, but sorry, it's my age and I wrote it down so I would remember. But anyway, she only had a first name. There's very little known about her. She was an African American woman. So she actually had one around 1847, so it's much earlier than that. The other end of the story is the guy who was so excited about the potato chip. So it's like, whoa, this is amazing. He was supposed to have been Cornelius Vanderbilt. And it was Vanderbilt who basically created the potato chip. And so the family of the Vanderbilts have owned that forever. Like, oh yeah, our family invented the potato chip because Vanderbilt was so upset about the way the potatoes were. But that didn't happen either. Okay. And the reason that didn't happen was, even though they claimed it did, Vanderbilt wasn't even around at that time. So probably what happened is this guy, George Crumb, had created the potato chip and was serving it, but with somebody, it was around my guess is around all over the place. What's really fascinating about this story, though, is that now I'm not sure about the trademark of that, but what I do know is that he could not patent it. He could not patent the way that he was making potato chips. So other places used his means of making potato chips. And why couldn't he patent it? Because he was half African American and half Native American, and they were not allowed to get patents on what they made. So that's the story of the potato chip. And the last one I'll talk about with potatoes is the potato candy, which is an Appalachian food. Again, the potato isn't from Appalachia, it isn't from here, but originally, but all these potatoes all over the world apparently have their origin in Peru, or the area of Peru. However, it did wind up in Appalachia. It's easy to grow, it's easy to mix up, you can add a lot of sugar, and you can make a nice little Appalachian potato candy. It's a dish of potato candy. So there you go. Is it Appalachian? Yeah, I guess it is. But when I researched, I found it in California and Idaho before I found it in Appalachia. So what's American? Who knows? We're everybody from everywhere, and that's how it is. So I guess, does anybody have anything they want to bring up or ask or anything like that? We have a couple more minutes. No, nobody.
Any questions and you don't want to ask them, you can use the chat function. We'll read them off.
Oh, okay. CRUM. It's George Crumb, CRUM.
We have a question from Doreen Thompson asking why the British or Irish have chip shops. They of course refer to what we would call a French fry as a chip.
Right. I don't know why they gave it the name chip shop, but and how they wound up getting into Ireland and the Celtic areas and also Germany. It's thought that they came over here. It isn't clear. Uh-oh. Am I here?
Yes.
You
Oh,
are.
good, because I just lost you. So I'll keep talking about the Zoom call has technically ended on my end. So the use of potatoes was widespread because it grows so well in those areas. It doesn't, can grow in rocky areas, it can grow in sunny areas, whatever, and became a real standard there. Why they call them chips, though, I don't know why they did. I never thought of that. So it's a good question. Anything else?
Question about pies, if we don't seem to be getting questions in the chat. Um, in the Renaissance period and up through the at least 17th century, the pie was made with a very thick hot water crust, and you ate the contents, but you didn't eat the crust.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a
When did
pie. Yeah.
when did a crust that was actually soft enough to be eaten become popular?
Well, I can only tell you for North American history, which is what I do. And it became, it kind of merged with the hand pies, which were made with, using leftovers to have to eat. But in the 1700s, then you start to see, yeah, there were crusts, and you would eat the crust, and it wasn't the fruit pies necessarily. It could have been made with whatever was around, or it could have been made just with meat. But in North America, in the 1700s, you found that there were pies with crusts that you ate.
Let's see. C.C. Williamson has asked, when were hard candies invented and how were they made without a candy thermometer?
Hard candies are really interesting because they've had so many iterations, and they've been around for so long. So the way that they would make, it depends. You're talking about sugar plums, or you're talking about the drops that we have. But and you're talking about molded, or you're not talking about molded. So I'll tell you about an earlier hard candy, but I also want to get in this little bit. I don't know how much. I don't want to go over too much because I know that schedule is important. But the hard candy candy originated as medicine, and it continued to be a medicine through today. I mean, we use it even though we don't know that's what we're doing, for medicinal purposes. The hard candy itself was used as a remedy for sore throat, and it was used for bad stomachs, and the ingredients in the hard candy would help with the use of the medicine. So we always think of sugar being a way of flavoring, but it wasn't so much flavor. I mean, it could have been flavoring, but sugar itself isn't very flavorful. So it was also for the medicinal qualities. So then, getting back to the hard candy, one example would be the clear toy candy, or you could call it, there are no stained glass candy. There are a number of names for it. And what they would do is essentially boil sugar with water into a syrup, and they boil it, and then they would pour it out onto a pan in front of a fire, and they would let it dry, and then once it was hardened, they would crack it, and that was what we now think of as a Christmas candy, but was called stained glass. It was called, in the old days, it was called hardtack, and it was a use of sugar. Another use of getting the hard candy style would have been with the sugar plum, where they would have a balancing pan over a fire. They would add sugar. They would have like a sugar syrup that they would create, and then they would put a little teeny cedar nut and sort of coat it with this sugar syrup, leave it by the fire, let it sit and dry, and then they do it all over again. And they would add another layer, let it sit dry and harden. It was very complicated.
Huh.
And it did become a hard candy, which we sell at my shop from 1591. That's one of the earlier companies that's still around from Toulouse. But there were also the little fennel candies that you find in Indian restaurants. Those were some of the same ones. So they both are hard candies. The sugar plum version was extremely hard to make because if you stop the motion of the sugar for 1 second, it would crystallize. So you have to stir and shake the pan at the same time. But they do go way back, and with the earliest cough drops, that was the beginning of candy being both a medicine and a candy. Now it's entering the universe of fun foods. But it's still good for you, still good for your sore throat, right? So both. So yeah. Anything else?
Susan Legan asked, what can you tell us about horehound? And I'm
Oh,
curious about that because I've been eating horehound candies and I'm trying to figure out what actually produces that flavor.
the horehound plant. I love horehound. I grow it in my garden. And you can grow it in your garden too. It's a wonderful plant. It's of the mint family. It came here with the trade routes probably in the 1500s. It's because it's of the mint family, it's a really rugged, if not invasive plant. It has beautiful sort of like ridges along the stem as it goes up with little flowers, and the leaves that kind of have almost like little feathery things on them, which is called hoary, Hoar. So they're hoary, and they were used for hoary, meaning that we get all sorts of wise guys saying, "Oh, why did I call it horehound?" Right? But there's the other thing, which is hound is another word for candy. But the plant itself is called horehound plant. And they are, as I said, of the mint family, so the roots grow underground, and they're really, they'll come back every year. They're really hardy and wonderful. And they were used for sore throat, as I mentioned before, for stomach ache, and for, in the day, anything that was herbal had 800 different uses depending on who was selling it. So it had all of that. The horehound is one of the only herbs that really didn't take off as a candy, at least for most of the 20th century. And now, especially, people don't like horehound at all because the taste is so bitter. However, there is still, a small group. We carry horehound at our shop, and I will tell you that people buy it. And so my employees tell me that, whoa, that's horehound. I want to try it. We don't get a ton of orders for it online or anything like that. So I don't know what they think. But and my hunch is it stayed more in the medicinal realm because the flavor. Say, unlike peppermint, you can make it taste good. Horehound, and taste is relative, I know, but horehound never totally made it over to the candy universe in recent times. Anything else?
Yes, the marshmallow is a plant that grows in a swamp and has a very pretty white flower in the spring. In fact, as you go from the mainland in Virginia across to what they call the Northern Neck on US 360, you go past a swamp that in the spring has a absolutely full load of mallows. What do they do to turn marshmallows into the candy that we know, or is there not a connection there?
Yeah, there is a connection there. And I do want to tell you that I grow the marshmallow plant in my garden. I have quite a bit of garden area, greenhouse, and I also own 2 farms. So I'm experimenting with these things all the time. And it is somewhat invasive. They look like hibiscus flowers. It's amazing. And the value of the marshmallow plant, and it is, marsh mallow. It's a mallow that grows in the marshes, as you said. but can also grow in your gardens. The value of that plant, it is what used to only be medicinal, and it came from the root of the marshmallow plant, which is very glutinous and very sticky. And it was used as a tea, and it still is used as a tea. So if you make it, drink it when it's hot, because otherwise it'll be closer to, not really, but sort of in the direction of Jello than it is in an actual beverage. What made the marshmallow of today, which does not contain the mallow, had a lot to do with the fact that during the Industrial Revolution, this guy was trying to create some kind of glue for the steam locomotive, and he thought he could get it through the marshmallow route, but that didn't work. But what it did do was create instant gelatin. He had became a kind of gelatin. In other words, it would add, it would help things adhere, and it had all of those properties that the cook would want. But he didn't care. He didn't like it. He didn't want anything to do with it. I guess he trademarked it, and it became his thing. But nobody really used it until the late 1800s. And then that was where it was really packaged as instant gelatin. So Rose Knox, she and her husband found good use for it, but Rose got the word out about this instant gelatin, and it maintained the name. It maintained the name marshmallow, but what it really was a replacement for marshmallow. And so we had the marshmallow made without marshmallow, but with instant gelatin, as well as many, many other things. And the parent of that marshmallow, not a marshmallow, led to such things as the circus peanut, which then became the Lucky Charms cereal. Good?
Yeah.
Have any other questions? If you are trying to ask a question on through the program, be aware of the fact that you were muted when you came in, so you have to unmute yourself. No, I'm not seeing any indication that anybody else has a question, Susan. So looks like
We're good.
looks like we're all ready to go out and buy potato chips and potato candy and
And
marshmallows.
Yeah, listen, if you want to ask me a question, just email me. And it's Susan at True, TRUE, Treats, TREATS, Candy, CANDY.com. And if you go to our website, True Treats, and you decide to buy something, email me and let me know, and I'll give you a discount.
That's nice. Thank you. Well, as you know, along with the honorarium, you also get a 1 year's free membership in CHoW. So feel free to log in and watch our upcoming programs.
Good. Well, thank you, Judy. And thank you, everybody, for having me.
It's a pleasure. This was fun. Very interesting. Fun foods and fun conversation.
And as you mentioned, future programs, Judy, next month's program is on baking and how Vienna changed the world. I assume we're going to be talking about the multi-layer torte.
The Sasha Tort and whatever. Yeah, I would hope, among other things. Yeah.
Let's see. Does anyone have any announcements that they would like to make to the group or bring anything to the group's attention?
My only announcement I said in the beginning, I can say it again, is that Susan is going to be on February 4th doing another Zoom, this time with candy attached. You can email me and I can get you registered for it. It's like $65, including shipping, and it's going to include candies that have been used for aphrodisiacs. And we're just sort of bypassing having an in-person event for the Shen in February because of the chance of snow. So we thought we would do a delivered event. And so if you're interested in tasting and getting involved in that way for this, you all have my email, and I'll be happy to facilitate your registration. It's a geography-free event, so you don't have to be local here. You just need to have a mailing address that Susan's team can send it to. So
It's been a while since we asked if anybody wanted to stump the group with a what's it, but so I'll throw that one out in case there is anybody that would like to show us some mysterious culinary oriented item and see if we can guess what it is. Again, I'm seeing nothing in the chat and no indication from folks on the screen, so it looks like we don't.
no, but we will be planning an in-person event in June. And if we go by pattern, it would be the second Sunday of the month in the afternoon in June. And the reason is that this is actually our 30th anniversary of CHoW this year. So we thought it would be fun to do something. We've had the last few years, we've done an in-person event in June just to sort of round out the year. But this one we'll try to do some extra special things for anyone who attends.
And that at least was brought to my attention as I logged on to the meeting today. So we're only just starting to think about it. If anybody has any suggestions, pass them along to us. We'll see what works.
When we did the 20th, there was like an interview with Shirley and so forth downtown, but and then a little bit of a reception. But this is just going to be a luncheon, I think, and not with a formal program.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah.
This is Cece. My idea was, you remember when Najmia Batmangli did the Persian cooking demonstration for one of our CHoW meetings?
Yes.
She has opened a restaurant at Tyson's next door to Tiffany's. It's called Joon, Joon. And I was thinking it would be a great cuisine for us to gather in June for a luncheon, and we could have Najmia come and speak to our group.
That would be, I think it's a brilliant idea. It's a really good idea.
They have free valet parking, and it's a beautiful space. They have private rooms and such. The other thing for Chowline, I'd like to mention that Claire Cassidy has been contributing some original stories that she's written. Her next one in this February issue is about the history of potatoes. She did one on pistachios for the December-January issue. But, Chowline really needs people to send in information and stories. I've been designing the newsletter for 20 years. But I can't, keep producing it unless people contribute some content, because I can't write the whole thing, of course. And so I'm hoping that some CHoW members can contribute some either original writing of theirs or a summary of an article they see online or something like that.
Your opportunity to appear in print, folks. Anything else? No? All right. Going once, going twice. I think that concludes our afternoon. Thank you very much. We hope to see you again for our February meeting. We will all appear
which was determined.
we will all appear on Zoom as we normally do.
24.
All right.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bruce.
We are adjourned.